first show in the month of June. Summer is here, and we're gonna start that month with a show talking about how a Palestinian American comedian keep her face straight in the last few weeks of the vicious, savage attack and bombardment of the Palestinian in Gaza, and the ethnic cleansing in East Jerusalem, and the prostitution of the Zionist state policy in the occupied territory with the help of the American and the European. It's fascinating to see the people who rely on comedy and humor in their career, seeing all this tragic images that we show on television 24/7, and try to keep their sense of humor and their perspective. So we're gonna be talking with a Palestinian American, well-knowing, and she well established. She came here to Minneapolis excuse me, few years back, and she had a one-person show. Jennifer Jajeh, I'm sure that's exactly how she pronounce it. Okay, well, we'll let her deal with that. Stick around and see. We're gonna meet with Jennifer very soon. Do you have it?
What am I? That seems to be the question on everybody's mind. Do I know Osama bin Laden? Was I on the flotilla? Do I drink Osama bin Laden? How many guys named Muhammad do I know? God, her name is Jajeh. Palestinian. Middle Eastern? What do you mean? What kind? Palestinian? Ooh. Ask a Palestinian. My name is Jennifer Jajeh. I'm a Palestinian writer and performer. I've been performing this show for 5 years around the US. I brought it to the UK, to Edinburgh, to Beirut, now to London. And I found that people really had an interest in learning what was happening. Do Palestinian women really wear bikinis? That's your question? No, there's not gonna be any belly dancing in the show tonight, dude. No, we did not convert. There are Christians in Palestine. Jesus, the founder of the Christian faith. Yes, well, he was born in Palestine, as was my mom. Do I eat bacon? This show is really meant for, I think it's meant for a Western audience. I think it could do well in Ramallah, and people, I think, would relate and would understand, but it's really a diaspora experience, and it's also, I think, an experience that the West doesn't see. So I feel like it takes the issues but presents it in a very entertaining way, in a more exciting way that people are engaged emotionally and maybe see the issues differently. So
I Heart Hamas, which a one-person show. It's been a tough year and tough time for independent artists, and especially a comedian to perform in the pandemic, and in the last a few weeks, we have the savage attack and assault on Palestinians in Gaza and ethnic cleansing in eastern Jerusalem. Horrible images are coming out of Gaza. And on top of that, we've been living under the lockdown and the pandemic. And so we have two viruses, the COVID virus and the Zionist virus. So, Jennifer Ajaz, you are an artist and a comedian, and I think you came here to Minnesota a few years back, and you had I Heart Hamas show. It's one-person show. It was a beautiful, well-received, but it's a long way from 4 or 5 years ago to the pandemic and what's going on in Gaza. So tell us what your last 3 weeks looked like.
Oh, well, it's interesting because I quit, I deleted or actually paused all my social media the last month or so and was taking a break from, being in the public eye and communicating. And I said, let me just take a little break, clear my head. And then, of course, Israel decides to start bombing Gaza. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to get sucked back in. And that's the thing about being an artist of Palestinian descent. You can't just, it's like you are constantly expected to comment on the issues. You feel compelled to comment on the issues. And then your work becomes very much about that. And, I read this social media post. I can't remember who put it, but it just echoed something I feel all the time. Like, can we just get over this conflict and be done with this on the other end of it so that we can just be normal people again instead of constant political activists agitating for the rights of people? I know the answer. The answer is very clear. If we just get onto it instead of delaying all this and suffering and death and destruction, it's like, let's just get to the solution, is my perspective. We all know what the solution is. One democratic state for all people who claim this as their homeland. That's the only obvious solution. We all know this is what's going to happen. Is it going to happen in 5 years? Is it going to happen in 50 years? Why delay the inevitable, is my perspective. Let's just get there.
And that's became very, very apparent in the last few weeks. That is the end of two-state solution that has been promoted, and especially Arab Zionist leaders with their normalization and the deal of the century and all that crap. It been appearance now the Zionist project morally crumbling, not the building in Gaza. But so as a comedian yourself, people expect different things from you, and to be funny, to be how do you navigate that? And I know when your I Heart Hamas, you were funny, you were insightful, you were provocative before, you were everything all over the place, and there wasn't. The feedback from the audience was very impressive. People, educate, informative, insightful, and also funny. But can you do the same thing now when when the culture reduce you to just a Palestinian, not even a Palestinian American?
Well, it's also it's difficult because as a Palestinian, also we're grieving, we're upset, we're agitated, we're traumatized, we're being re-traumatized constantly. And so it's difficult as a performer, as an actor, as a comedian to always spin it into being funny. And I find that's very limiting. I do stand up, but I also do straight acting. And I like in my one-person shows, because it's a long format, you have the opportunity to mix in, as you said, like jokes and talking to the audience, playing characters that more insightful, more dramatic, a mix of comedic and dramatic. Whereas when I'm doing stand-up, which is what I've been doing mostly in the last few years, you're expected to be funny. And you're expected to be constantly funny. And so it's takes a specific skill set, which I think takes a long time to build, to be able to weave insight and more like thoughtful moments into stand up. And so there's that which is one thing in and of itself. But as a Palestinian artist, honestly, right now, I've been questioning a lot where my art is going to go, because I feel frustrated that I'm expected to only present the Palestinian perspective as my art, as if I can't talk about other topics because they're not pertinent. And people want to hear about, it's like, oh, can white people only do white things? Can Palestinian black guys only can do black comedy? I mean, it's like, I feel that we get reduced to only speaking about our experience as Palestinians, and that's what people want to hear. And honestly, it can't be funny all the time. It's very tragic. And so there are ways to present it, the comedic aspects of it, but I'm really right now reconsidering what my work is going to look like moving forward, because I would like to I feel an urgency to talk about Palestine, of course, because I do think the needle is finally moving. People are finally seeing that the Israeli propaganda machine is just that, and that what's happening on the ground and as it's being reported by mainstream media is not the truth. And I feel like there has been a groundswell of public opinion and organizations and celebrities speaking out, and who are finally saying, wait, this isn't what we think it is. This is actually injustice. This is apartheid. And we haven't seen that. When I started doing my shows and performing in 2007, 2008, we did not have that sort of public support. We did not have that general consciousness and understanding of the situation on the ground. We had a lot more support for Israel. I feel like now with Black Lives Matter, with all of trans and LGBT rights, with everything that's been happening in the last decade, the pendulum is shifting. And so I think people are understanding and being open to learning about what's really happening in Palestine. And so on the one hand, I want to talk about it. I moved to talk about it because I moved to bring about a solution. As I said, let's bring about a solution so we can move on with our lives. I've been doing this morning manifestation where I'm lying in bed and I'm thinking every morning, like, what would my life look like in a free Palestine? Because I think to bring it about, we need to, on a large scale, start imagining it. We need to, envision it into reality, and not just this woo-woo envision it and it's done. No, we also have to take action and, sign petitions and put pressure on governments and educate people and start a groundswell of movement and understanding.
As an artist, I don't know if the artist's role is to find a solution, but, ask the tough question and question the power and as a Palestinian American, either you're Palestinian or Palestinian American, the space that is left for you. You are an artist. You tell a story, and I think the Palestinian story hasn't been told there. The Zionist narrative is predominant throughout our culture, literature, and media. So, how much space do you have to tell the Palestinian story?
Well, it's interesting because I definitely can see the difference in how, first of all, now that there's so much social media, TikTok, YouTube, you can produce your own, you can put your Instagram live, you can create content very easily with your phone. It has made it very accessible for people to create content and tell their story. That's what we're seeing. That's where we're seeing the narrative shift. However, I've also been working in mainstream entertainment, and in that space, there is very little space to tell the story of the Palestinians and what's happening on the ground. I have been told numerous times, your career would be much more successful if you talked about things like dating or talked about more.
You get it from both sides.
So yeah, you're walking this very precarious line. Honestly, I do believe my career could be more successful if I didn't talk about Palestine, but at what cost? Like,
Yeah.
people have to make their choices of what their moral integrity is and what they, there are artists who can separate their work from their personal beliefs. I am not that person. And so I'm now at a point where I'm embarking on a new phase. Like, I did come to LA 10 years ago. No, 8 years ago. I did, do that thing and do a little bit of TV and film and doing stand up in, mainstream comedy clubs. And that's been a great experience. But I feel that there's a ceiling on how far I can go in that because I'm very outspoken. And so I'm kind of shifting back now to reassessing, do I want to tour a new show that is, again, all of my original content and go on a more independent route, as opposed to attempting to, you try to break through within, you try to break through without, and you figure out how you can get your voice out there in the most
Yeah,
effective way.
you were born here, you're Christian, you're an Arab, you're a Palestinian, you're an American, you're a woman. You have a lot of tools to tell that story, and you're probably more equipped to have more deep, comprehensive, insightful, multi-facets story. So how do you draw out of all of this? A lot of people don't know that Jesus was born in Palestine, that
Right.
most of the Arabs in America are Christians.
Well, it's interesting because it is such a multifaceted identity that people have, they've pigeonholed that, like, even all on Twitter, people try to say, oh, well, it's because you're Islamic, fascist, blah, blah. And I said,
Islamic.
actually,
You are Islamic.
you the stupidest guy. Anyway,
You have a show. You
you
have a
get
show
into,
about that name, isn't it?
no,
I'm
it's
Islamic.
I wrote I was published with a collection called "Don't Panic, I'm Islamic" by Saki Books in London. I have a short story in this
Yeah, I see.
collection of Arab and Muslim artists. But it's like people don't even know who or what they've created, this boogeyman, this Arab Muslim enemy, that they don't even know who we are or what our identity is. And so I really enjoy in my work bringing up that I'm Christian, that I'm a woman, that I'm Americanized, that I'm very loyal to Palestine, that all of these things can coexist in one person, in one identity. And it's a lot more complicated in terms of your misconceptions of who we are, but not complicated in what's happened.
You travel all over the United States, even the world, and a lot of comedians are Jewish. What's your relation there, and how the Jewish experience that transformed to be comedy, and they mastered it. There is the best comedian are coming from that tradition. Do you see a parallel there? Do you see when they see you, when you meet them on the road, when you are on the same show, what kind of conversation you have?
I can say that I don't think I've ever really been embraced by Jewish
Really? They
comedians.
usually open-minded, liberal, as we always heard. But
You know, I think because a lot of my work is my humor is pretty radical, and it's a little bit outrageous. And I think
if there is such thing, humor is humor.
I think that also in comedy, people like to differentiate between like political comedy, conscious comedy, left, progressive comedy versus mainstream comedy. And so it's just,
Yeah.
like anything, people like to make differentiations and then
Branding.
decide where they are in things. I'm not political enough to be a political comedian because I don't sit around talking about Trump or the Republicans or the GOP or Mitch McConnell or whoever the hell.
Not
and
like
so,
Bill Mayer, that idiot. Okay.
Yes, well, we know
No,
about
that's a different show, I guess.
That's a different shit. That's a completely different show. It's funny because I just ignore these people. Like, I don't give them any credibility. I don't respond or retweet. My newest thing and this latest massacre that we've seen is I need to take care of my mental health. I need to take care of my community. I need to educate people who are interested in learning about Palestine. I need to work on my own creative output around these issues, but that leaves no time to deal with idiots and trolls and people who just want to provoke and responding to that, because I think that that's a waste of resources and a waste of energy that I don't have time for.
And you don't want to even honor those outrageous, idiotic Islamophobes, trolls. You performed in, you are now living in Los Angeles?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you have different, how's going now as the pandemic is opening up, I suppose?
It's starting to open. We have not had any shows for the last, I did a few Zoom shows during pandemic. I did a show that we performed live to an audience of like 8 people in masks or something. And then we streamed it at a comedy club. Yeah, no, it was not funny because I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot. There's one person every, it was.
I know.
And so I think now in LA, it's just starting to open up for live performance, but it's still mostly in outdoor spaces and spaced out. And, I do think that in other parts of the country, there is a lot more performance happening inside. A lot of people are touring they're not performing locally.
Well, you have outdoor, weather permits to have an outdoor venues and permits.
Well, they're just starting. They're just starting that in the last few weeks. But I think mostly all the people I know who are doing comedy in LA are touring to, Texas and Florida and the South and all these places where they're like, well, you don't care, just come. We're going to pack a club. And, it's funny because there's like comedians I know who were like, we don't care. This is pre-vaccination that they were touring and they were like, I'm not afraid, I'm going to keep touring. And then half of them ended up with COVID. So I said, well, okay, that's your choice, if you want to keep touring. But, I do think that there is going to be a lot of performance later this summer, maybe this fall, it will peak and there will be a lot of opportunities to perform. So I'm hoping to develop some new material to like take advantage of that.
Well, if we're all going to die at some point, at least you want to die laughing or happy. What's your next project? No.
Do you want to die laughing?
Well, that is the last joke. But what's your next project when things open up? Are you working on stand up or one-person show or a play?
Well, I've spent the last year and a half-ish writing a TV pilot. So I am redeveloping that and doing a new draft of that. So working on a TV pilot.
Can you give us a hint here, a breakthrough?
Yeah, I was working on it with my writing partner, who's also half Palestinian, half Egyptian, Renda Jarrar. And
Egyptian are funny. Difficult it is as a Palestinian, as you probably have relatives there in Palestine, and you see all these images, savage attack on hospitals and families, and you try to be funny. That's a very hard ask. So thank you so much for giving us this time.
Thank you. Yes, I'll let you know when I'm back in the Twin Cities, and
please,
we can.
Please.
You can help me promote my shows.
Please, anytime, Jennifer.
Jennifer Jajeh.
Jajeh, and I am Palestinian. You know, growing up Palestinian, I always wanted to be famous because I wanted my name in the headlines. Because I imagined it would go something like this. Jennifer Jajeh blowing up the chart. Jajeh explodes expectations with her new album. Jajeh's new show bombs in London. So, it was tough growing up Palestinian. School lunches were especially difficult. Other kids would bust out PBJ sandwiches. I would open that brown paper sack to find a lamb shank. Other kids on the weekends got to go to Chuck E. Cheese. I had to go to yet another teenage cousin's wedding. Other kids got sleepovers. I got full body waxes. In middle school. Yeah. It's interesting how white Christians think they own Christianity. And when I tell them I'm a Palestinian Christian, they're like, what? Did you convert? And I'm like, I am from Palestine. The Holy Land. The birthplace of Jesus. You know Jesus, the founder of the Christian faith, right? Right. He was born in Palestine.
اسمك غنيت اسمك رح غني ركعت وصليت والسما تسمع مني اسمك غنيت اسمك رح غني ركعت وصليت والسما تسمع مني عطلالك عجبالك ركعت وصليت هون السما قريب